is June 3rd, 2025, and Kiev just carried out its third attack on the Crimean Bridge since 2022, as the regime is making it very clear to the world that if it can't win on the battlefield against Russia, well, then it's just going to turn to terrorizing Russian civilians, as we have seen multiple deadly attacks carried out this week alone. We've also seen the drone attack that took place across 5 Russian regions. It apparently took Kiev a year and a half to plan out. The media here in the West is really hyping this up, acting as if it is leading to some massive change in the war, but that's not what we're actually seeing on the battlefield. So here in today's video, we are going to take a look at all of the latest updates, along with some of those pesky media headlines that I really want to break down and give some context to, so that you can be more aware of them whenever you see them out in the wild. Before we get into all of that, though, just a quick reminder that your support does make my work possible. You can sign up at any time as a monthly paid subscriber over on my page on Substack or on Patreon. You can also send a one-time donation on my page on Buy Me a Coffee. I'm so grateful to have y'all here, and looking forward to getting into today's antics, so let's get to it. As we have the Russian Investigative Committee announcing on Tuesday that the recent acts of railway sabotage in Russia's Bryansk and Kursk regions were terrorist attacks planned by Ukraine to cause maximum civilian casualties. Those attacks left 7 people dead and over 100 injured, and it was even mentioned by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he called Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Sunday ahead of the planned talks between Moscow and Kiev and Istanbul, and Rubio extended his sincere condolences over the railway attacks. Now, you may be wondering, has the Trump administration stepped in at all? Have they seen this and realized that it's gone too far? I mean, Trump himself talks about how he wants to put an end to this war. He wants to see an end to the dying, and yet here is Kiev expanding the war, targeting Russian civilians openly, and only continuing to increase the dying and the number of civilians that are targeted. So wouldn't the Trump administration step in? Well, the answer so far is no. Instead, you have Trump in a position where he seems to be wanting to continually distance himself from all of this, right? He's just the third-party broker here. He's just here to try to get Moscow and Kiev to agree to get along. Don't worry about all of the weapons that the U.S. is sending to Kiev, the military intelligence that they are giving to Kiev, and so on and so forth. No, just worry about the statements that Trump has made and the attempts that his administration is making to try to bring an end to this conflict. Except that the conflict keeps going on, and so do the attacks that Kiev is carrying out, again, targeting Russian civilians. As Ukraine's security service, the SBU, took to Telegram on Tuesday to declare that they had targeted the Crimean Bridge in a third attack. This time, they claimed to use 1,100 kilograms of explosives, which they said severely damaged the underwater pillars supporting the bridge. Now, as we've already seen this week, Kiev has a bit of a tendency to exaggerate when it comes to the effects and the impact of their attacks. So it remains to be seen what the damage actually was here. We haven't heard much from Russia at all about this latest attack, but it is important to note that this is the third attack carried out by Kiev in recent years on this landmark bridge, which of course connects Crimea to the rest of Russia. That's part of why they don't like it. They can't get over the fact that the people of Crimea would want to be a part of Russia, and therefore they have to terrorize those people in any way possible. Also important to note that the last 2 attacks, which were carried out in 2022 and 2023, both resulted in civilian casualties. So while, again, we don't know the exact reports on this one, we're still kind of waiting to see what is released. The Crimean Bridge is a place that Kiev has attacked multiple times, where they have killed innocent civilians, and they have celebrated it for all of the world to see. And these kind of attacks are, of course, a major concern. They've got to be a major concern for Russia at this point because, well, yes, it's clear that Kiev has no way to win on the battlefield against Russia, we're also watching them when it comes to the point where they start to lose on the battlefield, where they realize that they are losing in terms of manpower. They get desperate. They start to strike out and they start to target the Russian civilian population. And we've seen drastic increases in those attacks in recent years, especially when you take into account the fact that NATO supports all of this. I mean, look at all of the Western countries, the US and company, who turned to Ukraine, and they went from refusing any sort of long-range weapons, refusing to increase their lethal aid for Kiev because they were concerned about sparking a direct conflict with Moscow, to now you've got Germany's new chancellor talking about how the West has removed restrictions on the use of long-range weapons, which we of course know is the use by these Western countries. They want to act like it's Kiev that's carrying out these attacks. We know that it's not. So it is the West, it is NATO that is directly waging war on Russia, and has been for a while now. And so that makes it incredibly concerning when you look at the fact that NATO doesn't care, right? They don't care about the killing of Ukrainian civilians or Russian civilians here. They're supporting all of it. And they're also supporting this latest drone attack that was carried out by Kiev on Sunday across 5 Russian regions. And the media coverage has been nonstop, as the Associated Press led with the headline, Ukraine's drone attack on Russian warplanes was a serious blow to the Kremlin's strategic arsenal, in which they said that the bold attack demonstrated Ukraine's capability to hit high-value targets anywhere in Russia, dealing a humiliating blow to the Kremlin and inflicting significant losses to Moscow's war machine. But then they go on in that same article to admit that Kiev's claims that it destroyed 40 Russian bombers cannot be independently verified, and that the footage that we've seen on social media only shows a couple of the bombers actually being hit. Plus this claim that, Kiev can now hit Russia anywhere in the country, anywhere that they want to. It's like, yeah, I guess if you give them 18 months to plan out the operation that included over 100 drones, they say. So over 100 drones, took them a year and a half to smuggle it into Russia, and then they only got a few bombers, maybe a couple destroyed, a few more damaged, and it's like, this certainly is not the result that we were promised, that we're being promised by the media right now as we speak. The Wall Street Journal also declared that Ukraine's stunning assault roils Russia's global military strategy, in which they described how much they know about Russia by listing its distant rivals as the US and also China. And while I don't know that I would describe Russia and China as rivals, or that I would think that Moscow is gearing up for some sort of attack on Beijing and all of a sudden Kiev came in and ruined its capability to do so, I'm also genuinely curious as to how this single attack had such an effect on Russia's military strategy, if any effect at all. I mean, we saw this with Kiev's Kursk incursion back last August, right? The media headlines, they were all over the place talking about, we cannot believe that Kiev carried this out. What a brilliant, daring operation that just got under Russia's nose. And it's like, they got over a border that wasn't heavily fortified and took a bunch of little hamlets and backwater towns that weren't heavily populated. If you want to claim that that's some sort of an accomplishment, then okay, how many men did Kiev lose in that overall incursion, in the overall operation, which, yes, it stretched over the course of months because Russia let it stretch over the course of months, because they did not just take all of their efforts and put it in the Kursk region. They knew they played the long game, which is what we're seeing them do now. And it's just such a reminder to me that so much of what Kiev does is about grabbing these headlines in the Western media. And if that's their goal, then it works for them, right? We have plenty of headlines talking about how great and how inspirational Kiev is and what an impact it has on Russia, except when you get into reading these articles, they never really tell you what the actual impact that is supposed to have on Russia. You also had Reuters with satellite images of Russia's Belaya airfield in Siberia, and they interviewed experts who noted that while the images showed multiple bombers that had been destroyed or damaged in the attacks, that there was no way to verify Ukraine's claim of 40 bombers being completely destroyed. You also have USA Today hyping up the claim they say is being made by some Russian military bloggers that this attack was Russia's Pearl Harbor, as if this somehow equates to Japan's 1941 attack on the US naval base in Hawaii that was Washington's reason for entering World War II. And if it was the case that this attack was somehow Russia's Pearl Harbor, then I would be extremely concerned if I were the West right now. But instead, look, you got all of your headlines. They can keep this going for a week. Maybe they'll get 2 weeks out of it, depending on what else happens in the world. But beyond that, we have to look at the question of, okay, is this some sort of new capability? Is this something that Kiev can recreate? And the answer seems to be no. From everything that we're seeing, obviously, now we know how the SBU carried out this attack. We know that Russia is going to do everything in its power to combat any future iterations of an attack like this. And while we are in a position of being concerned about future sabotage, right? Future things that Ukraine could try to do to target the Russian civilian population. That's been a major concern for a while now, and I think that it will continue to be a concern, especially as you see the Kiev regime continue to get more and more desperate. Well, we also have to look at just how much of an impact this attack actually had. And I want to bring up a post from friend of the show, Brian Burletic of the New Atlas, as he specifically noted on X that an operation that took 18 months to put together and is not capable of being replicated, which is why the SBU exposed how it was done, does not constitute a new effective capability. It constitutes a stunt conducted by the US and its Ukrainian proxies, specifically because they don't have the capability of turning the tide of the war. He also made an important point when it comes to the claim that Kiev is putting out there that they destroyed 40 Russian bombers, or around 34% of Russia's cruise missile carriers. And he specifically noted that even if that's the case, Russia still possesses a 3-to-1 artillery advantage, a drone advantage, a cruise missile advantage still, and ballistic missile advantage, a glide bomb advantage, and most importantly, a growing manpower advantage. So in other words, when you look at the drone attack that was carried out on Sunday, when you look at the latest acts of railway sabotage, when you look at this latest attack on the Crimean Bridge, does any of it have any impact on the current situation on the front lines? Well, the short answer there is no. As reports noted on Tuesday, the Russian forces are advancing in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region after Zelensky warned last week that Russia had amassed around 50,000 troops on the border following Putin's latest announcement that Moscow plans to create a buffer zone. And these advances are expected to continue, especially as we get into the summer and especially as Russia continues to wear down Kiev's military. That is what this is all about at the end of the day. And because that is their eventual goal, then you can also expect that these attacks of sabotage, these attacks targeting the civilian population in Russia, that they will continue to escalate. And you can expect on top of that that NATO will be all for it because it gives them headlines to run in the media to keep the public distracted. Because instead of talking about, oh, Ukraine lost this territory, or oh, Russian forces are advancing here, now the media gets to talk about this latest drone attack and they get to blow it out of proportion. They get to quote the figures that Kiev provides, and then they get to quietly, later on in the article, admit to their readers that all of those claims cannot be independently verified, and that's something everyone should be talking about. If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also find Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.